Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers Inspiration. I'm your host, Harriet Cole. Very happy to be with you here now today. How are you doing? How is this season treating you? And we're in summer, most of us, anyhow. And actually, right now, I'm in my happy place, and it's just cool, warm, perfect temperature. I was in Manhattan yesterday. It was also a perfect temperature. I love I like being in warm weather. And when it's warm but not humid and just beautiful, that's when I'd say an extra thank you because it makes it easy to move around and to easily access joy doing whatever it is that you have to do. So I hope that you are finding some ease in your day, in each moment as you are going about your life, because life is full. There's a lot going on. A lot of us have many things on the list that we need to check off. I know my list is especially long. Hello, Sekou. Good morning to you. Uh, it's it's interesting when you have a lot to do, how you look at what's going on in the world, and sometimes I find that uh, you can be agitated, you can be short-tempered, you can be so focused that you may not see some of the things ahead of you. And there's pros and cons to this. You do need to be focused. In life, it's very important to be able to pay attention, sometimes to have laser sharp focus for whatever is going on, so that you have the ability to accomplish whatever the task is at hand. At the same time, I think it's important to have flexibility and to give yourself the space to have the vision to see whatever is in front of your eyes and to be willing to see it without judgment, to be willing to just survey the landscape. What is before me? Who is before me? What is happening in the space that I'm inhabiting, where I'm entering? What's going on? And based upon whatever is happening, how do I show up? Now, that doesn't mean that you change yourself, but we are such dynamic beings. How can we be open to whatever the moment is that is before us? And that is definitely not an easy thing to do, to be open, to be able to look with non-judgmental eyes at whatever is in front of our face. I titled this week's inspiration, Be Open. I did that for a couple of reasons. One, we're in Pride Month. And during this month, many are shining a light on the LGBTQ plus community, hopefully a light of welcome and friendship and support and allyship and being. And I say hopefully because that is not true for everyone. But especially given that this is a focal point this month, I wanted to take a look at it for a moment. And in part, my daughter, Carrie, said to me, I said, what should we be talking about this week? She says, why not talk about pride? She said, because it is Pride Month. And I said, that's a good idea. And as I was contemplating it, I remembered talking to someone just the other day who is a religious man, but not an old man. And I'd say that because I'll tell you why. He was a religious man, and I was telling him about an event that was happening, and he was reluctant to attend. And I said, what's your reluctance? He says, well, I don't want to say, but I don't want to be around those people. I said, what people? And he wouldn't say it out loud, but then what he said was, well, his religion is against those people being people in the LGBTQ community. And I was like, now, I do know, I've done a lot of study of religious thinking And in fact, because I'm working on this new book, Jumping the Broom Today, that includes LGBTQ couples, I've looked at religions and what they believe and what they profess. And I know I don't have my head in the sand. I know that there are religious views that are very narrow in terms of people's identity and what is considered acceptable or not. But I think people are people. I think also that religious texts tell us to love people as they are, to welcome people as they are. And this person said, I really can't even shake hands with someone who is that. Like, what does that mean? You can't shake hands with someone who is that. Then what are you? If you are judging someone based upon an aspect of their identity that has nothing to do with you, is not going to impact you, but you're judging them and you're rejecting them based upon that, what does that mean? I really don't understand it. Not based upon the person I was talking to, but just in general. I don't understand it, and I don't understand how we take that into our beings and then look at people and judge them. I think that is being incredibly closed. I do understand that this person feels to a cellular level that he is right about what he believes, and he believes that it is rooted in his spiritual text. It may be. I have not read the Quran. But as a student of humanity, I believe that I was taught that we are to love each other, that we are to honor each other, that we're to give each other space to be in this world. And that, to my understanding, is to let go of judgment, to allow people to be. And by the way, that doesn't mean that if someone is going to harm someone else that we co-sign that. It doesn't mean if we observe behavior that could be destructive to another person that we say, oh, go ahead, you can do that awful thing to that person. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I want us to think about is, what does it mean to be open? What does it mean to see people for who they are? What does it mean to look for the goodness in other people and to see that? What does it mean to do that? Especially if people are different from you. And by the way, most of us are different from each other. It used to be people grew up in the same communities. They did not move away from their communities. They built community, they nurtured it together. Everybody had a role. The community kind of functioned as this dynamic unit. And for many people, that has expanded. For many people, the young people move earlier. They go away to school, they go to the military, they get a job, they may be someplace else. They travel the country, they travel the world. When you put yourself in other environments, when you put yourself in the space of meeting other people, lots of things happen. Exposure is so incredibly important for growth. And I think that's what helps people to be open. When you're exposed to something or someone who's different from you and you get to observe that and learn, often your perspective changes. I remember when Dick Cheney was vice president, conservative Republican. Typically, conservative Republicans are also conservative as it relates to LGBTQ. And then his daughter came out as a lesbian. And I remember observing him in the public eye, kind of grappling with how to deal with this very personal revelation about his family, about his beloved daughter, to honor her and to kind of reconcile how he had grown up, what he was taught, and then what's happening now. And as is true for many, if not most parents, when their children share whatever their identity may be that could be different from what the parents hoped, wanted, believed it would be, he had to come to terms. This is my daughter. I love my daughter. And his eyes opened, and he talked about it. Not so much at first, but he was in the public eye. He was vice president when this became known to us anyway. For me, the openness for me was in observing him. My respect for him grew tremendously as I saw him as a father grapple with values that he had, beliefs that he had, and the reality of his family. And ultimately, I don't even know what time period because I wasn't privy to that, but he certainly completely embraced his daughter. This sense of openness is something that I see often happens when reality comes knocking on your door. And it's not just about sexual identity. It could be about anything. Lynette says, let go of judgment and let live. Speak your truth. Yes, I understand that it can be hard that if you believe something, then what? In this book, Jumping the Broom Today, I met a couple, two men, one who is one of 12 children. And 10 of the 12 children are adopted. He grew up in a mixed-race household, very religious household, where the mother led the children's choir for 25 years. And the father was part of the deacon board or something like that. He was part of leadership at their church. And as you might imagine, the church was definitely anti-LGBTQ. At a certain point, this young man's sister, a younger sister, came out. And he had come home to spend some time with the family. And his father said, look, your sister has said this to me, and basically, I don't want you to say anything to her because I'm going to try to do my best to basically get the gay out of her. My words, but that was the sentiment. And this man said this is what prompted him to come out, because he had not been out. He had been hiding first from himself and then from his family. But he could not let his sister suffer while he was in silence. And so he came out to his family. You can imagine that made it doubly challenging for the parents, but his sister had an ally. Ultimately, out of these 12 children, he identifies as gay, his sister is lesbian, another is trans, and another is bisexual, and then the others are cisgender. Imagine those parents. Already they have 12 children, most of whom they adopted. So they have these incredibly generous spirits to want to bring children in and nurture them. But also, they had a belief system that told them that this was wrong. And that preached, according to my interview subject, preached that it is not acceptable, not welcome in their church. And so at a certain point, there became even more conflict because the kids were like, I'm not going to church if they don't accept me. So this mother-father duo, who were deeply religious, deeply involved in their church, and deeply loving their children, made a pivot. They ended up finding another church because they were not willing to sacrifice the spiritual relationship that they had with their children, and they did not want to go to a church that would not welcome their children. That is a level of openness that is profound. And when I listened to this story, what I also learned is when the parents became accepting of their children, including dancing with first the trans one at her wedding, and then later at this man's wedding, when they became fully accepting of their children, healing began for their children and for their family. Love heals. Love without judgment is the ultimate in healing. And I felt compelled to talk about this when my daughter said, "Talk about pride, Mommy." I could have just said, I'm talking to not knowing for sure who's tuned in today, but, a lot of people who are part of my universe are open-minded people, are people who are welcoming, who work to be welcoming of everyone. But I also know, because just telling you about the gentleman who I'd spoken to who was like, no, I don't want to shake their hand. This is someone who I consider a friend. And so far, we have not been able to come to a space of opening on this subject because he believes, his religion says, no, I can't even shake your hand. I can't really see you. And I'm like, how is that possible? But I'm not willing to let go of the conversation. I don't know whether I will be successful, but part of what I think my duty is on the planet is to support people in seeing what's right in front of their face, especially seeing the humanity in others and appealing to that. It is so easy for us to judge. All of us do it. I do it. I mean, sometimes we do it for sport. It's easy to poke at people, especially when you're feeling down, when you're feeling less than, when you're feeling contracted. It is very easy, and it can often feel comfortable to point your finger and poke it at others. And I don't want to do that. I want to look at people with love. I want to do all that I can to be welcoming and accepting of people as they are. And look, a lot of people call me the etiquette lady. That does not mean that I'm saying every kind of behavior is okay. No. But I'm saying who you are at your core, your spirit, we should be respectful of that. We should honor that. We should let people be themselves. I had another friend when John Kerry was running for president. I believe it was against George W. Bush. And John Kerry was the governor of Massachusetts at the time. And Massachusetts was the first state in the United States to allow same-sex marriage. And my friend, this was a good friend of mine, my friend said to me that she, in good faith, could not vote for John Kerry. And I said, why? She said, because she told me she would wake up at night sometimes and have it in her mind that she saw this parade of men in wedding dresses walking down Fifth Avenue, like as a group wedding, walking toward the altar. And that made her crazy and she couldn't sleep. And I was like, first of all, if that were to happen, how would it impact you? They're not coming in your house. They're not having sex with you. They're not doing anything with you. It's their own business. But if your vision is seeing this parade of men getting married, it's horrifying. It definitely was George Bush who he was running against, because the image that I saw, now we have a view of W almost angelic, because he and Michelle Obama are friends, and the presidents, excluding this one, have a positive, respectful rapport with each other. But let us not forget that W led the United States, the world, into war on a lie. and led our young people into war when the country that the people who were flying those planes into the World Trade Center were not from Iraq. Proven, and he knew it. So it was a lie, and it was proven to be a lie later. Isn't the parade of young soldiers, young American soldiers into war worse than a parade of men or women who love each other walking to an altar? And I said this to her, and she couldn't see it, because sometimes we aren't open to what is right before our eyes. I am not saying any of this to disturb us. I'm saying it because I think we need to look through a different lens. How does other people's behavior impact you? How does your behavior impact others? What happens when you are open to people, to seeing them for who they are, for being respectful of them for who they are? Not saying they need to be your friend, they need to be your house guest, they need to be anything other than another human being in the world living their life. And as an African American woman, I can tell you, I've had countless experiences of people judging me, making assumptions about who I am, what I have, what I can do, what I can't do, what I deserve, based upon how I look. I mean, the classic New York City story is when the cab passes a black person by in order to pick up somebody else. One of the best possible things that could have happened for people of color anyway is the creation of these car services, Lyft and Uber and the rest. You order your car and they're not going to pass you by. Do I look like somebody who's going to rob your car? Do I look like somebody who's going to bring you harm if you let me in your taxi? I cannot tell you how many times taxis have passed me by. That is the easiest example, but it's an example of judgment. People judge each other all the time. What if we stopped? What if we stopped and just looked at people and looked for the goodness in them? What if we made the choice to just see good in others? Alton says, "Dear God, I pray that you open my heart and fill it with love, that I see, hear, and welcome people who are different than me. This is how I choose to lead, is always my prayer." Oh, Alton, that's beautiful. And by the way, yes, it can be a prayer because it takes vigilance, doesn't it? As I say, all of us, myself included, are judgmental. In those tender moments, in those, as I began this discussion, in those busy moments when there's so much on the list, it's hard to get it all done. In those moments, in feelings of contraction, feelings when you don't have enough, that is when people start pointing the finger and start judging others. Well, it's because of you that this isn't happening for me. It's because of something other than myself. It is when people feel that they don't have what they need, that is often when they start looking to blame someone else, to point the finger at someone else. That's not the only reason that people judge, but it's one of them. And so if we have an act of prayer, asking God to help us to see the goodness in others, help us to look to the light in others, and we don't have to focus on all the other things. It's really possible to not do that. I love this. I'm going to repeat Alton's prayer again. Dear God, I pray that you open my heart and fill it with love, that I see, hear, and welcome people who are different than me. This is how I choose to lead. It's always my prayer. Imagine if you choose to lead in that way, with an open heart, seeing others, seeing the light of God in others. Man, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. My husband likes to study nature. So out here, he often walks the beach, and he's been photographing birds and dewdrop on a leaf and for 30 years. And marveling in the wonder of creation, from the animals to the plants. Again, the flow of water. And as I listen to him talk about the things that he discovers on his daily treks into nature, there are lots of lessons. Among them, just slow down. Slow down, pause, shut your mouth, and look. Look around, observe. What do you see? What is the beauty that you see in whatever is before you? When you notice something different, look at it with curiosity, not judgment. We can do the same thing with people. Look at people with curiosity, not judgment. I'm curious. Why did you make the choices that you made to be the person you are today? And there's so many choices that we make. We make the choice how we get up in the morning. We make the choice what we put on our bodies, how we clothe our bodies, what we're going to do with our time, how we walk out of our homes into the world, how we greet others, how we navigate space. Look with curiosity at other people. When you notice, wow, that person's so different from me. Celebrate people. I was in the grocery store yesterday, just picking up a few things, and I had my the earphones that you plug into your phone. I had one earphone in, and I was walking around. I saw this woman, striking woman. She had on a beautiful, simple but beautiful outfit. She looked really great. And I make it my business to compliment people when they look great. Generally women, just saying, because I'm not flirting with people, just to say, compliment them. I also do compliment men. So this woman was walking by me, and I said, wow, you look beautiful. And she looked at me and she said, oh, you look beautiful too. Now, that was really nice. I was very casually dressed, but, appropriate for the moment. But then she said, oh, and I appreciate you and your analog. She said, you're analog. I said, well, what do you mean? Because I had the earphone in. She said, that's much healthier than the ones that you stick in your ears. And anyhow, we had this lovely moment, a simple moment. We didn't share names. We just shared support and saw something good that we appreciated in each other. And when the moment ended, which was not even 60 seconds long, she said, it was lovely to meet you. And then we kept going. Isn't it nice to have moments like that? We saw something good in each other. We didn't tease each other. She could have said, you got the analog thing in your ear, girl. It was just light and lovely and positive and put a smile on our faces. Why am I telling you that? We can have light, lovely, positive, heavy, deep, all kinds of interactions every single day. And it's our choice. It's our choice to make interactions worth it. It is our choice to uplift each other, to see the good in each other, to be open to seeing that and supporting it and honoring it for all of us. And even, my friend who's very convicted, I'm being open to accepting him for his beliefs because they're very strong. We do not share the same belief, but I know he believes it because that's what he was taught. And so I feel my role is to be present, to help myself and others to see the goodness in each other, to not pass judgment on either side, and to continue to put one foot in front of the other toward goodness. And then what happens? And so I challenge you as you walk into this week, can you do that? Can you be open? Can you look at others to see the goodness in who they are? Can you celebrate that? Can you speak to that? If you say anything, and it doesn't have to be words, you say it with your eyes, you say it with your gaze, you say it with the way that you experience them in space. Try it. Be open. It's worth it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, have a great day and make it count. Namaste.